Joining us now is Dave McCormick. He is running again for the United States Senate. And just so that our viewers know, this is your second turn at running for
second time
the
around.
Senate. Yeah. Why? Why are you doing this?
Well, when you lose by 900 votes of 1.5 million cast, it's a gut check. Do you really want to do this again? And the reason I'm doing it is because I believe America's the greatest country in the world, and we're in trouble. And I think I can make a real difference in the Senate. I've served our country in the military. I've served in the government. I've created jobs in Pennsylvania. I think we need new leadership. I think we're going in a terrible direction. I think President Biden, and Bob Casey's supported President Biden 98% of the time, is taking us down a path where we're losing the America we love.
Yeah, share with our viewers your background in terms of your professional background.
Yeah, well, seventh generation Pennsylvanian. Mom was born in Punxsutawney, dad in Indiana County. I was born in Washington County, and I grew up in Bloomsburg in Columbia County. My dad was the president of a local college, and we had a family farm, and I grew up playing football and wrestling and baling hay and trimming Christmas trees, and was a busboy. And wrestling took me to West Point. I was the co-captain of the wrestling team at West Point, served in the 82nd Airborne Division, went to combat in the first Gulf War in Iraq, and then came back to Pittsburgh. And I ran a company in Pittsburgh named Free Markets for a number of years. I didn't start it, I joined it and became the CEO, and I was part of creating hundreds of jobs here in Pennsylvania. Went on, served in the government under President Bush in the White House, in the Treasury, and then went on and ran a big investment firm called Bridgewater. So I look at myself, I pinch myself, I feel like I've lived the American dream. I feel like our kids, all of our kids, are unlikely to have the great opportunity that I had unless we change direction and get things back on track.
What's your take on this inflation that we're dealing with? How do we stem it?
Listen, the 60% of Pennsylvania families live paycheck to paycheck, and this inflation is crushing them because prices have gone up by 20% and real wages have gone up by 14%. So if you're buying rent, if you're buying a fuel or food or rent, you're getting squeezed. And it's the direct result of two bad policy choices. One is unbelievable spending. So if you look at Republicans and Democrats over the last 20 years, both parties are guilty of spending too much, but under President Biden, it's a hockey stick. We're spending $6 trillion more dollars, and that's the main driver of inflation. But the second thing is the war on fossil fuels. The energy policies of the Biden administration have been particularly detrimental to Pennsylvania because we're blessed with all this wonderful, clean natural gas. Those policies have driven up the price of fuel because there's an effort to stop consumption of oil and gas. That's the second big driver of inflation. And frankly, I'd reverse both policies. In the Senate, I'd say we got to pull back on the spending. Some of that Biden spending is in out years, and we've got to open up our energy sector. We need to become and continue to be an energy superpower. It's great for our security, it's great for our economy, and it's great for our environment because that natural gas is clean energy.
And so when we look at the energy policies, the current energy policies right now, moving forward, how do you, as a member of Congress, bring the scales in favor of changing the energy policy as it is? Is that a form of Congress, or is that just solely on the president?
No, it's both. And the Congress and the president should be embracing, in my opinion, the use of all forms of energy. Right now, what we're doing is heavily subsidizing EVs and solar panels, and we're trying to constrain the use of oil and gas. We should be embracing all energy sources. We should be doing that in a way that really allows us to develop our natural gas opportunities here in Pennsylvania. That requires pipeline reform. We got to have more pipelines. It requires the opportunity to drill without litigation and red tape. And ideally, we'd have an offshore port in southeast Pennsylvania that would allow us to export our natural gas to the world. That's the kind of energy vision we need to have. And it's the one thing, I just want to say, it's the one thing that could fundamentally change the trajectory of Pennsylvania.
Deregulation, how does that impact what you're talking about?
It's a huge part of it. Listen, I am for regulation that protects consumers, that is very necessary. But what's happened is regulations have compounded on top of regulations. And regulations have been used to pursue a political agenda, like under the Biden administration, to make it more and more difficult to access natural gas and oil. So I'm for reducing our regulatory burden on businesses. I've been a businessman, I've created jobs, and I'm for doing that in a way that's very thoughtful about protecting consumers when it's appropriate.
You enforce regulation to make sure companies comply for the benefit of the consumer, but then at the same time, you're saying that regulation is causing prices and the cost of everything to go up.
No. The regulations on oil and gas, they're not about consumers. They are about changing the direction of our energy policy in the country. The Biden administration is explicitly trying to kill consumption of oil and gas. Look at the most recent EV mandates. By 2032, 70% of light vehicles have to be EVs. I mean, this is absolutely devastating to other forms of automobiles. This is devastating to manufacturing jobs. No, these are not about protecting consumers. This is about a political agenda and an energy policy that's very focused on reducing carbon emissions as the primary goal. And by the way, I sit before you as a Republican who wants to protect the environment. I'm a deep conservationist. I believe in climate change. The way to reduce climate change, the way to reduce carbon emissions, is to export our wonderful natural gas around the world to places like India and China.